Hello and welcome. My name is Mapleless, they, she, he, and this is Literally Graphic. And today we are looking at the Early Years, Volumes 1 and 2 by Christopher Blain on art, Joann Sfar and Louis Trondheim on story. Ortho on letters. Originally 4 volumes in French. I suspect the books were also printed at a larger size. They are copyright 2001 to 2006. In French and 2005 to 2009 by NBM in English, translated by Joe Johnson. Both volumes are rated for mature readers for brief nudity and sexual situation. Other content notes are rape, disabling injury, and attempted suicide. Obviously, I picked up this duology because I had read and enjoyed other works by Joann Sfar and Louis Trondheim. I have previously read and reviewed Little Vampire and Rabbi's Cat by Joann Sfar, an extremely prolific and popular French-language cartoonist. He both writes and illustrates. For Louis Trondheim, I read and reviewed A New Favorite, Maggie Garrison, last year. Also his wife, Bridget Findicly's autobiography comic that Trondheim illustrated, Poppies of Iraq. His wordless comic Alieeen was a more long-time favorite and part of a theme video I did last year. Christopher Blain was the creator who was new to me and proved a bit hard to track down. Running his French Wikipedia profile through Google Translate, he was born in 1970. His work seems to have largely kicked off in the 1990s and continues to the present day. He appears to have 13 entries under distinctions and 1 under decorations. I'm sorry to be so vague, but between depending on Google Translate and knowing all too well my lack of French pronunciation skills, I'm trying not to embarrass myself too much. Books that he has done that my library has include In the Kitchen with Elaine Passard, Inside the World, and Mind of a Master Chef, which he did write and illustrate. The Speed Abater, Isaac the Pirate, Gus and His Gang, and Weapons of Mass Diplomacy. These volumes are cataloged as being fantasy adventure humor comics. Other keywords that came to mind were coming of age, mythical creatures, family, city politics, revenge, secrets, masked hero, unrequited love, and night. The duology is described on Goodreads as, quote, "We start on another tangent of the vast world of Dungeon, one that relates the origins of it. In fact, the first story of the early years, you will see the keeper barely an adult and leaving his family to go find fortune in a time of chaos and darkness." End quote. And, quote, "Hyacinth, dungeon keeper to be, continues to render justice in a cloak nightly as the nightshirt and stumbles upon the one he pines for, Alexandra, an assassin about to be raped. After his valiant and heroic rescue, his wettest dreams come true, with dire consequences. In the second story, which happens quite a few years later, he's married and a poor husband, worse even, a poor lover, until Alexandra plots to gain him back. Cloak and dagger with romantic bravura, and you thought he didn't have it in him." End quote. For better or for worse, this book was not what I was expecting. Gave me some Castle Waiting vibes, although that's a fairly cosmetic comparison, and I'm not sure how much crossover appeal there would be. The story is pretty plot intense, though. Lots of stuff always going on. There were a few jumps that caught me off guard, but that's probably a me problem. The art is nice, very dark overall, not dissimilar to a number of other French comics I've read. I was relieved that this comic was not written in cursive, as that is a real struggle for me personally. Moving along to gender and sexuality, this was one of the more disappointing aspects of the book. I definitely have the capacity to really connect with characters of all genders, but doing stuff like using rape twice to advance the plot of another character who gets the chance to white knight each situation, not really cool in my opinion. Plus, I think the protagonist stalks a woman they're obsessed with, saves them from someone, and then when they have sex, Hyacinth, aka Nightshirt, promptly contracts an STI. Just came across as sex negative and whorephobic. Then there's a time jump, and apparently the rejected woman has been pining Hyacinth this entire time. It all made the whole thing feel pretty claustrophobically heterosexual. It might have possibly been saved by the inclusion of more of Alexandra's perspective, but I am not betting money on that. Something that was a bit more one-off, but really much more disturbing, is that at some point in Volume 2, Hyacinth, aka Nightshirt, suffers a debilitating injury, and after coming out of a coma, decides the only course of action is to kill himself. Ultimately, he is not successful. But then his friends find a cure, so he's able to move on with his incredibly ableist life. Race was something I couldn't really pin down much. I don't know if any racial references were made, because I'm sure that looks a bit different in France. I am hopeful that as I continue to engage with translated French comics and read other people's reviews of these works, that I become more knowledgeable about this incredibly prolific comics market. Glass did play a small role in the duology, a bit of a bootstrap fantasy at times, although it never pretends that Hyacinth isn't being given a lot of favors by his wealthy uncle. So that's that. To conclude, I can't say that this prequel series really inspires me to want to read more of the Dungeon books, but you never know. I do sometimes read books that I suspect I won't like very much. Overall, I would say this duology is not something I would generally recommend. Feeling a bit stuck between 1 and 2 stars. We'll probably start at the 2 and see if that continues to feel like the correct rating to me. Bye y'all, keep reading and organize to end capitalist oppression. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.